let's talk some cricket then. 1996 World Cup, clearly a key moment in Sri Lanka's development as a nation. You said, I think, in your Cowdray lecture that pre-1996 Sri Lankan cricket suffered from an identity crisis. It's too timid, too soft, and played by the book. Clearly there was a sea change after the 96 World Cup.
There was a huge sea change. We were very technical cricketers pre-96, a lot of emphasis on technique. Every coach you went to, high elbow, you know, everything. There was nothing unorthodox about the way we played cricket, or different. That would give us the edge. We were very docile calypso cricketers, played with a lot of grace, lost very gracefully, because we won very rarely.
But, I mean, do you see part of your influence over Sri Lankan cricket was instilling a bit of steel as well? I mean, I remember, you know, your first series against England was a very acrimonious series.
It was.
And you were no angel on the field.
No, I mean, the thing was about, it was, I think, a matter of pride for us at that time, playing under, having seen Arjuna, I played with him in one series. I've heard all the stories, I played with Sanath, all of that, and it was a matter of almost pride to say, listen, stand up, don't take anything, don't take a backward step, don't take anything lying down. If someone has a go at you, either you absorb it, but don't back away from looking into that person's eyes, or go back as hard. And that's how we kind of toughened ourselves up.
The team is changing now as well. You've got players like Malinga. You talked about being very technical and by the book, and suddenly there's cricketers who are very natural, very instinctive, very unusual, very unorthodox. Malinga,
it started with Murali.
Murali, obviously.
Absolutely, it started with Murali. Then we had Lasith Malinga, Ajantha Mendes, and then we have now Akila Dhananjaya in the side recently. We have a left-arm Chinaman in Sangakkara. We have a guy who bowls with both arms who played the Under-19 World Cup and did really well. So suddenly, Sri Lanka cricket made a conscious effort to go after and identify and enroll guys who were different to give us an edge. And these guys have been instrumental in us winning a lot of trophies. And we need to keep identifying players like that and keep believing in combinations like that.
Your father might not have been satisfied with your overall output. Were you at the end?
I think stats-wise, of course, I have no reason to look back and be disappointed. It's strange, I was talking to someone about it recently as well, that as your career progresses, you start thinking less about runs and about what you're actually leaving behind. I think it's the same probably in life when you're closer to the end than the middle or the beginning, and then you try to rationalize, you know, okay, stats, yes, great, but what about the dressing room? What about a legacy? What is your legacy? Is it the runs, records, or is there an example that you left behind that players will be proud to follow? Whether you've changed the culture of cricket for the better, and whether the guys coming after you are going to have a better time of it because you have played. And
what's the answer to that? Yes.
Well, I think it's an ongoing search, really looking at the way we've developed. I am pretty happy with the boxes I've ticked, but sometimes that you don't get the privilege, or I wouldn't say that you have the right to answer that question yourself, but sometimes you don't get the privilege to do that. It's judged by others. So various people have various theories and answers to that. But looking back, to have regrets, of course I do. World Cups not won, this, that and the other, hundreds not scored, matches not won, yes. But they're all regrets that I can live with, because the one thing that you want to look back and say is that I gave it my best and I did it with the best of intentions at every single time.
I wanted to talk batting style and technique briefly. When everything's flowing, you don't see technique, you see style, you see grace, you see timing. That's what I work towards. So the implication is there, I think, that you've got to work ferociously hard to get a kind of base technique, and work so hard that then that becomes second nature, and in a match that completely then it disappears and you let instinct take over.
Absolutely, this theory, the Zen Buddhist theory of no mind, you know, absolutely having nothing that's that impedes that instinctive reaction that you've trained your body to do.
But if a young cricketer's watching, how much work does it take to get to that stage?
It takes a lot of work. I remember in the Big Bash I was speaking to Darcy, one of our openers, and I was talking to him about, without overthinking it, without premeditating it, just do what the ball tells you to do. He batted and he came back and said, you know, I was thinking so hard about keeping my mind empty that I said, okay, I understand what you mean. So it is habit. It is batting.
How long, if you had to make a change? I've noticed this summer, for example, sorry, you're standing with your bat much higher.
Yeah.
That's a change.
That's a change.
So if you're making a change to your technique, how much work do you have to put in practice before that change becomes natural?
It takes a while. It takes, and if you're making a change, it's no use having throwdowns to make a change. You need to bat against bowling, because no matter how comfortable you feel against a throwdown, it's very different when you're batting, because the moment you're faced with especially fast bowling, your natural instincts automatically sometimes take over, and those movements that then happen are actually the movements you should be making, not trying to temper those movements or impede them with technique or things that you think should be doing. Whatever gets that bat to the ball in a manner that's going to be effective and in a manner that you can repeat long enough for you to score runs is the way really that you should really think about batting. And that should happen when you're facing a ball without you even being aware of it. It just happens.
Paul Farrace tells a story about him watching you in the nets and you being very critical of him as a coach because he wasn't taking enough notice of your back leg. I mean, the game has changed a bit. Many more coaches now, much more backroom staff than there used to be. But you're saying the players got to take that responsibility upon his
Without a
shoulders.
doubt. I think time and time again, we love to talk about coaches, but using a coach is also your responsibility. How to best use a coach. A coach can't teach you everything. He can only guide you, give you enough information, give you enough pointers that you yourself then have to take on board and make use of. If you don't give him feedback, if you don't ask the questions, if you don't have the arguments, what is the coach going to do?
4 years ago, you gave the Cowdery lecture about 4 years ago. You said, we've now reached a critical juncture in the game's history. Unless we better sustain Test cricket, protect governance from self-interest and aggressively root out corruption, then cricket will face an uncertain future. That was 4 or 5 years ago.
I think a lot of that stands true today as well.
But are you optimistic?
I am. I think I definitely am. You see, how is Test cricket going? If you think of Test cricket as a cash cow, I don't think it's ever going to work. It's never going to make financial sense sometimes. Sometimes Test cricket doesn't even make sporting sense if you're trying to market it to an American or someone who's never been involved in the game. Rather than trying to change the essence of Test cricket, maybe we change the way we look at Test cricket. Not everyone is going to have an iconic series like the Ashes, where it's full crowds. Talk about how to build up those rivalries, but then what about Zimbabwe and Afghanistan and Ireland now and Bangladesh, a team on the rise, but still in the shorter format. So what are we going to do? Are we going to forget about that? Two-tier Test cricket, Test champion? Just do whatever it takes. But if that doesn't work, sustain it. Put in the money.
Where do you see your future? Runs are flowing this summer, but you are retiring at the end of the year. Lots of cricketers are lost to the game. They go to the media, well, not lost to the game, but they will go into the media, into coaching. Very few go into administration. Where do you see your future?
I've been talking to my wife about subsistence farming. But it's actually something I've been talking to my friends as well about growing your own food. And see, it's a funny thing. Sometimes we think too much of ourselves and think that we have a certain right and entitlement to comment on this game and be a part of this game as an administrator or someone whose views are going to be relevant or important. Actually, most of the time, you're not. Your time has come, your time has gone. Why do I feel so pressured that every time Sri Lanka plays that I have to send a tweet out after a game? Oh, what's wrong with me? Really? Watch it, enjoy it, and just you don't have to comment on it because maybe your comment is not really necessary or valid or important. So just let it go.
Sounds like you're going to disappear.
Yeah, well, hopefully. I don't know. I don't know whether my children will start playing cricket. I hope I have the strength to be able to treat this game with the respect that it deserves. And sometimes the best way you can do that is when your time has gone, to actually embrace that and move on.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.